What if I told you that the truck sitting in your driveway right now is quietly draining your bank account every single day you own it? We're talking about trucks that looked bulletproof on the lot, trucks that had legendary nameplates, five-star marketing campaigns, and price tags that made you wince. But you bought them anyway because you trusted the brand. Big mistake. Today we're counting down the 15 trucks Americans wish they never bought in 2026, ranked from bad to absolutely catastrophic. And I promise you, the number one entry is going to make your jaw hit the floor. Number 15, Jeep Gladiator 2021 through 2025. Let's start with a truck that looks like it was designed by someone who spent way too much time watching action movies. The Jeep Gladiator. Rugged, aggressive, open-air freedom. And underneath all of that theatrical toughness, a wallet-destroying nightmare that owners have been complaining about since the day these things rolled off the lot. The most infamous problem is something Jeep owners have nicknamed the death wobble. And yes, it is exactly as terrifying as it sounds. You hit a bump at highway speed, and suddenly your steering wheel is violently shaking like it's trying to escape from your hands. Your front wheels are oscillating uncontrollably, and you're doing 70 miles an hour hoping the truck decides to cooperate. This isn't a freak accident. This is a known, documented engineering flaw rooted in the suspension and steering geometry that Jeep has been dragging its feet on fixing for years. But it doesn't stop there. The transmission on these trucks has been a disaster across multiple model years, with owners reporting rough shifting, slipping, and complete failure to engage gears. Some describe their Gladiator physically lurching in traffic because the transmission literally cannot make up its mind. You paid $50,000 for a truck that can't decide what gear it wants to be in. That's not a vehicle. That's a riddle wrapped in a Jeep badge. Now here's where people get fooled. Gladiator supporters love to point out that it holds its resale value better than competitors, citing around 35% depreciation over 5 years. Sounds decent, right? Wrong. Once you factor in the thousands you'll spend on aftermarket steering stabilizers, suspension corrections, and transmission repairs just to make it safe and functional, that resale advantage evaporates completely. You're not buying a truck. You're buying a project that charges you admission every single month. Number 14, Nissan Frontier 2022 through 2025. Nissan redesigned the Frontier, and a lot of buyers thought they were getting a fresh, modern midsize truck at a competitive price. And on the surface, that's not an unreasonable assumption. New sheet metal, updated interior, reasonable sticker price. What's not to love? The platform underneath it. That's what's not to love. The Frontier has been playing catch-up with the Toyota Tacoma and Ford Ranger for so long, it's actually embarrassing. The driving dynamics feel dated, the technology lags behind competitors, and the long-term reliability data that's been trickling in over the past 2 years has not been kind. Owners who bought into the idea that Nissan had finally gotten serious about the mid-size truck segment are now discovering that the refresh was mostly cosmetic. And then there's the depreciation. Nissan trucks as a whole have a serious resale problem right now, and the Frontier is no exception. Buyers who purchased in 2022 and 2023 are discovering that the used market is not exactly lining up to take these trucks off their hands at a fair price. When you go to trade in or sell privately, dealers look at a Nissan truck and immediately start lowballing because they know these things sit on lots. Nobody's rushing to the Frontier. The market has spoken and it said thanks, but no thanks. Number 13, Ford Maverick Hybrid, 2022 through 2025. Okay, I'll be honest. When the Maverick launched, I kind of loved the idea of it. Small, affordable hybrid powertrain, genuinely clever. It felt like Ford had actually listened to people for once, and for a while, owners were obsessed with theirs. Wait lists stretched for months. People were paying over sticker at dealerships because demand was through the roof. Then reality showed up uninvited. The Maverick Hybrid started generating reliability complaints that nobody saw coming. Hybrid system hiccups, transmission behavior that owners describe as jerky and unpredictable, and electrical gremlins that have sent more than a few trucks back to the dealer repeatedly. For a truck positioned as the sensible, economical choice, the ownership experience has been anything but sensible for a meaningful chunk of buyers. Here's the real gut punch. People bought the Maverick specifically because it was supposed to be the low-drama, low-cost alternative to bigger, more complicated trucks. The whole value proposition was simplicity and savings. When your simplicity truck starts generating complicated repair bills and dealer visits, the entire reason you bought it collapses. You could have just gotten a used Tacoma and called it a day. Number 12. GMC Canyon 2023 through 2025. The GMC Canyon is essentially the Chevrolet Colorado in a slightly fancier shirt. Same factory, same bones, same problems. And those problems are substantial enough to make this list without breaking a sweat. GMC as a brand has earned the kind of reliability rankings that should make any buyer pause. We're talking about sitting near the bottom of brand reliability surveys, competing with brands that most Americans can't even name off the top of their heads. For a mainstream American truck brand with decades of history, that is genuinely shocking. The electrical problems on the Canyon are extensive and, more importantly, dangerous. Over 55,000 units were recalled because the front camera module was falsely detecting obstacles and triggering automatic emergency braking out of nowhere. Think about that for a second. You're cruising down the highway at 60 miles an hour, and your truck decides, completely on its own, to slam on the brakes as hard as it can because a software bug told it to. The car behind you doesn't have a warning. You're getting rear-ended at full speed because of faulty code. That's not a minor inconvenience. That's a potential fatality caused by a computer having a bad day. Add in LED headlights that randomly flicker and shut off while driving at night. An infotainment system that crashes with the kind of frequency you'd expect from a laptop running software from 2004, and you've got a truck that feels more like a beta test than a finished product. Number 11. Ram 1500 with air suspension, 2021 through 2025. Ram's optional air suspension system sounds incredible on paper. Active leveling, automatic ride height adjustment, improved towing stance, better handling dynamics. The brochure makes it sound like your truck is going to float down the road like a magic carpet. What actually happens is more like watching a magic carpet slowly deflate in your driveway at 2 in the morning. The air suspension on the Ram 1500 has been failing with such predictable consistency that it's practically a rite of passage for owners who spec'd this option. The compressor starts making grinding noises because moisture corrodes its internal components. Air springs develop leaks, and your truck starts sagging on one corner like it's tired. Automatic ride height adjustment stops working entirely. And in cold weather, the whole system throws up its hands and malfunctions in ways that'll leave you with improper ride height and a truck that handles like a shopping cart with a bad wheel. Here's what really burns people. When the air suspension fails, you can't just swap out the one broken piece. The entire system is integrated. Compressor, springs, sensors, control module, they're all connected. Dealership repairs run into thousands of dollars easily. And this isn't a one-time fix. The system fails, you repair it, something else in the system fails, you repair that, and the cycle just keeps going. Eventually, most owners give up and convert to conventional coil springs and shocks using aftermarket kits, which means they spent thousands of dollars adding the air suspension option when they bought the truck, then spent more thousands ripping it out and replacing it with something that actually works. You paid twice. Once to get a feature, again to get rid of it. You could have just said no in the options menu and saved yourself the entire ordeal. Number 10. Toyota Tacoma 2024 through 2025. I know, put down the pitchfork. Hear me out. Toyota built one of the most ironclad reputations in the automotive industry on the back of the Tacoma. For decades, this truck was the default answer when someone asked what the most reliable mid-sized truck you could buy was. It was almost a boring answer at this point. Tacoma. Done. Next question. The all-new 2024 Tacoma shattered that reputation in a way that genuinely shocked the automotive world. Consumer Reports ranked it dead last in the mid-sized truck segment for predicted reliability. For a Chevrolet, that's disappointing. For a Toyota, that's a 5-alarm emergency. The problems center on the new turbocharged iForce Max powertrain and the 8-speed automatic transmission. Owners report chronic rough shifting, hesitation during acceleration, and delayed engagement that makes the truck feel like it's thinking too hard about simple tasks. Toyota has already issued technical service bulletins for transmission problems on early models, which is Toyota's polite way of admitting that yes, there are systemic issues requiring dealer intervention. The electrical systems are a complete mess as well. Drive start control, malfunction warnings, brake system warnings, infotainment freezing, connectivity features refusing to connect. This is a brand new truck that struggles to deliver basic functionality without glitching out like a smartphone from 2010. The tragedy here is that Toyota buyers pay a premium specifically because of the reliability reputation. A Tacoma costs more than a Colorado or a Ranger because the market has decided that Toyota's track record is worth paying for. 2024 and 2025 buyers paid that Toyota premium and got a first-generation platform that's actively struggling to live up to the name on the badge. Number 9. Chevrolet Colorado, 2023 through 2025. Everything I just said about the GMC Canyon. The Chevrolet Colorado is the same truck, same factory, same parts, same recall, same phantom braking problem, same headlights that decide to take the night off while you're driving through it. The Colorado earns its own spot on this list because of the sheer scale of the problems and the specific combination of issues that make it dangerous to own. We already talked about the emergency braking recall, but there's more. Blind spot monitoring failures, complete instrument cluster failures, power windows and doors that randomly stop working, and entire trucks that get completely bricked by an electronic failure, won't start, won't shift, totally inoperable because one cheap sensor decided it was done. Here's what makes modern electronic failures so much worse than old-school mechanical failures. When your carburetor acts up, a mechanic can look at it, figure out what's wrong, and fix it. When your truck has 100 different electronic modules all talking to each other in a language only the factory fully understands, diagnosing which one is causing your truck to turn into an expensive lawn ornament becomes a weeks-long adventure in frustration. And frustration, as it turns out, is not what you want from a vehicle you paid $40,000 for. Number 8. Ford F-150 with Power Boost Hybrid, 2021 through 2025. The Ford F-150 is America's best-selling vehicle, has been for decades, and the Power Boost Hybrid was supposed to be its triumphant leap into the future. Fuel efficiency without sacrificing capability, an onboard generator for job sites, a smarter truck for a smarter era. Instead, it earned the worst predicted reliability rating of any truck in its segment for 3 consecutive years. Not just below average, not just disappointing, the worst. 3 years in a row. The core problem is that Ford took a 10-speed automatic transmission that already had a documented history of durability concerns and rough shifting complaints, and then added an electric motor, a high-voltage battery pack, complex power management software, and a suite of integrated hybrid components that all have to work in perfect harmony. When any single piece of that system fails, it doesn't just fail by itself, it cascades. Suddenly you've got multiple systems misbehaving simultaneously and your truck is completely inoperable. Owners describe electrical gremlins that are nearly impossible to diagnose. Random error codes that technicians can't track down. Batteries dying overnight for no reason, leaving you stranded in your own driveway. EGR valves and coolers failing repeatedly. The electric motor integration creating weird, unpredictable lurching behavior that makes driving in traffic feel like an adventure nobody signed up for. And the downtime. One owner documented their 2021 Power Boost spending 10% of its life at the dealer over 30 months of ownership. Over 2.5 years, that truck sat broken at a service department for more than 3 months total. This person needed a new transmission and extensive EGR system repairs, all supposedly covered under warranty, yet they still had to deal with rental cars, missed work, and the special kind of misery that comes from owning a 30-year-old truck. I mean a brand new truck, sorry. It just felt 30 years old. Number 7. Ram 1500 with Hurricane engine, 2023 through 2025. Ram killing the Hemi V8 was controversial. People had feelings about it, strong feelings. The Hemi wasn't just an engine, it was an identity. It was the reason Ram trucks had a personality that stood apart from the crowd. When Ram announced they were replacing it with the brand new twin-turbo Hurricane Inline 6, the internet had a very civilized reaction, by which I mean it absolutely did not. But here's the thing. The backlash over losing the Hemi was almost beside the point compared to what happened next. First-year engines on any platform carry risk. That's just engineering reality. Complex new powertrains need real-world miles and real-world conditions to reveal their weaknesses. And the Hurricane is a high-compression twin-turbo unit that has introduced enough early ownership concerns to make this list without any controversy. The brutal truth is that nobody knows if the Hurricane's turbos will last past 100,000 miles because there simply isn't enough long-term data yet. Nobody knows if the cooling systems will develop issues. Nobody knows if the software, and there's a lot of software managing this engine, will cause random stalling or other surprises down the road. What we do know is that Ram is selling this unproven powertrain at full price, and owners are essentially serving as unpaid beta testers for an engine that replaced a known, trusted, battle-hardened V8. The regret tends to arrive right around warranty expiration. New engine architecture means mechanics are still learning these systems. When something goes wrong out of warranty on a complex twin-turbo inline 6, the labor time goes up because it's unfamiliar territory, and unfamiliar territory in a repair shop always costs more. Number 6. Nissan Titan and Titan XD 2020 through 2025. Let me be very direct with you about the Nissan Titan. This truck is a financial black hole. Not metaphorically. Literally. Money goes in and does not come back out. The Titan has the worst depreciation in the entire full-size truck segment. We're talking about losing between 48 and 58% of its original value over 5 years. A typical mid-trim Titan owner loses more than $25,000 in equity just by owning the truck. That's not a vehicle expense. That's a casualty. The reason the depreciation is this severe comes down to market relevance. Ford, Chevy, Ram, and Toyota own the full-size truck segment. They have the dealer networks, the fleet contracts, the brand loyalty, and the reputation. The Titan exists in a kind of automotive no-man's land where almost nobody, not fleet buyers, not contractors, not families, specifically seeks one out. When you go to sell or trade in a Titan, dealers know it's going to sit on the lot. And when dealers know something is going to sit, they lowball you with the confidence of someone who has absolutely nothing to lose. Then layer the reliability concerns on top of that. Fuel system problems causing rough running. Interior electronics failing early and costing a fortune to replace. Transmission issues that mirror complaints across multiple Nissan products. And because Nissan's dealer network doesn't have the depth of the big three, getting repairs done quickly is more expensive and more inconvenient than it should be. Here's the nightmare scenario that plays out over and over. You buy a 2024 Titan for $50,000. 5 years later, the dealer offers you $21,000. You still owe $28,000. You're upside down by $7,000, which means you need to bring cash to the table just to get rid of a truck you've been paying on for 5 years. Then you roll that negative equity into your next loan. The cycle starts over worse than before. That's not transportation. That's a financial trap dressed up in a pickup truck costume. Number 5. GMC Sierra 1500 with 6.2-liter V8, 2021 through 2024. If you wanted maximum power from a GM full-size truck during this era, the 6.2-liter Ecotec 3 V8 was the obvious choice. Big displacement, strong output, that classic American V8 character. What could go wrong? Nearly 600,000 units worth of what could go wrong, as it turns out. NHTSA Recall 25V274,000 covers manufacturing flaws in the connecting rod and crankshaft components of these engines. These are not peripheral issues. These are fundamental rotating assembly components. When they fail, you don't get a warning light and a graceful limp to the nearest dealership. You get a horrible knocking sound, a sudden drop in oil pressure, and then your engine seizes. You've thrown a rod or spun a bearing, and your 6.2-liter V8 is now a very expensive boat anchor. Complete engine replacement costs can run from $15,000 to $20,000 out of warranty. Even under warranty, you're looking at weeks of downtime while the dealer works through the backlog of affected trucks. But here's the part that should make every 6.2-liter owner's eye twitch. When GM announced the recall fix for trucks that passed initial inspection, the solution was switching to higher viscosity oil, installing a new oil fill cap, and updating the owner's manual. That's the fix. An oil change and a new sticker for a structural manufacturing defect in the rotating assembly of your engine. GM is essentially asking you to trust that a different weight of oil will compensate for components that were built with tolerances too tight for adequate lubrication in the first place. And this was before we even get into the 6.2's pre-existing reputation for lifter failures, that characteristic ticking and knocking, and excessive oil consumption linked to the active fuel management system. You paid a premium for the biggest engine on the options sheet and got an engine that was already struggling before the recall made things dramatically worse. Number 4. Ford F-250 and F-350 Super Duty 2020 and 2021. Here's a sentence I genuinely cannot believe I have to say out loud. Ford sold trucks with a steering column that could separate from the steering system without warning, causing complete loss of steering control, and those trucks stayed on public roads for years, while parts to fix them sat on back order. Recall 25S94 covers this exact scenario on 2020 and 2021 Super Duty trucks. The upper steering shaft can disconnect from the rest of the steering system with zero warning. One moment, you're driving a 3/4-ton truck down the highway. The next moment, your steering wheel is spinning freely and you have no connection to the wheels underneath you, at highway speed. In a vehicle that weighs over 6,000 pounds, Ford issued the recall. But parts weren't available until the first quarter of 2026, which means thousands of these trucks spent years on public roads with a known, potentially fatal steering defect because the supply chain couldn't keep up with the scope of the problem. If you're shopping for a used Super Duty from these model years right now, there's a very real chance the previous owner never completed the recall work. That truck sitting on the used lot for a price that seems almost too good to be true, there might be a reason it's priced that way. Set aside the safety issue for a moment, though honestly, please don't set aside the safety issue. It's enormous, and the financial picture is still grim. The F-250 retains only about 55% of its value after 5 years on an initial price that's often north of $72,000. That's more than $32,000 in depreciation on a truck that's supposed to be a durable work asset. The combination of a life-threatening safety recall and brutal depreciation makes these specific model years a decision that owners are living to regret. Number 3, Ram 1500 Classic 2019 through 2025. This is the one that generates the most arguments whenever I bring it up, because the Ram 1500 Classic has a loyal fan base that will defend it with the energy of someone protecting a family member, and I understand the attachment. I really do. But we need to talk about what this truck actually is. The Ram 1500 Classic is built on a platform that traces its origins back to 1989. 1989. That is the year the Berlin Wall came down. That is the year the Game Boy launched. That's how old the fundamental architecture underneath this truck is. Ram kept selling it alongside the newer generation Ram 1500 because it was cheaper to produce, and dealers could move it at lower price points to budget-conscious buyers who saw the Ram name and assumed they were getting a modern truck. They were not getting a modern truck. The safety technology gap alone is alarming. Modern trucks have advanced driver assistance systems, updated crash structures, better airbag configurations. The Classic was built on bones from an era before any of that existed in the mainstream. Insurance companies noticed, safety testers noticed, and slowly, inevitably, buyers who assumed they were getting a bargain started noticing too. Then the rust issues compounded the problem. The older architecture, combined with less advanced corrosion protection, has created rust problems that owners in northern states and coastal areas are discovering far too early in the truck's life. Frame issues, underbody corrosion, rust appearing in places it should never appear on a truck that isn't even 10 years old. And resale value is brutal because the used truck market eventually figured out what the classic actually was. An old platform wrapped in a current generation body, sold at a price point that seemed like a deal and wasn't. These trucks depreciate faster than buyers anticipated, leaving owners underwater in ways they didn't see coming when they signed the paperwork. The Ram 1500 Classic is the automotive equivalent of someone selling you a house that looks renovated but has 1989 plumbing and wiring underneath the fresh paint. It looks fine on the surface. The problems are in the walls. Number 2, Ford F-1 50 Power Boost Hybrid, the full horror story, 2021 through 2024. 3 consecutive years holding the worst reliability rating in its segment. Not a fluke, a pattern. And the failures aren't coming from one weak system. The entire powertrain is falling apart from multiple directions at once. The 10-speed automatic already had rough shifting problems before the electric motor got added. Hybrid integration made every existing flaw worse. Owners described lurching, hesitation, and unpredictable shifts that make highway driving feel like an argument between systems that hate each other. EGR valves clog, coolers fail, batteries die overnight for no reason. Dealership technicians run error codes they genuinely cannot diagnose. Trucks sit at service departments for weeks while mechanics chase problems that keep moving. And that 10% downtime figure. 1 in every 10 days, this truck is broken. On a vehicle costing $60,000, that's not inconvenient. That's a betrayal. Ford's brand promise is built on workhorses. The Power Boost Hybrid torched that promise and handed owners the bill. Number 1. Ram 1500 Classic Deep Dive. Plus, the broader lesson about trusting old platforms. Here's what makes the Ram 1500 Classic the number 1 truck on this list. Ram was selling a genuinely impressive, award-winning modern truck and simultaneously selling this thing, a truck riding on a platform from 1989, in the exact same showroom, wearing the exact same badge. Buyers saw the Ram name, saw the lower price, and assumed they were getting a deal. What they were actually getting was a platform that predated the internet, predated cell phones, and predated 35 years of safety and engineering advancements that modern truck buyers take for granted. Worse fuel economy than the competition, higher maintenance costs than anticipated, rust showing up too early, safety technology that belongs in a museum, and depreciation that blindsided everyone who thought they were being financially smart. A 1989 platform, a 2025 price tag, a 2026 regret. That's the Ram 1500 Classic story in one sentence. And that's the real lesson from this entire countdown. Whether we're talking about phantom braking on a Colorado, a steering shaft separating on a Super Duty, a Hurricane engine with no reliability history, or an air suspension system that turns into a money subscription nobody signed up for. The trucks on this list all represent a version of the same broken promise. You paid for something that the badge implied. You got something the fine print didn't warn you about. Do your research. Read the owner forums. Check the recall databases. Talk to mechanics who actually see these trucks when they break, not salespeople who see them when they're new and shiny. Because in the truck market right now, the gap between what looks bulletproof in the showroom and what actually survives 100,000 miles of real ownership has never been wider. And your hard-earned money deserves better than a truck that spends 10% of its life at the dealer, rusts ahead of schedule, or has a steering column that thinks separating at highway speed is an acceptable life choice. If you want to know which trucks are actually worth your money in 2026, the ones that laugh at high mileage and hold their value like their lives depend on it, check out our video on the 10 truck engines that refuse to die. Because the best truck purchase starts with knowing which ones were actually built to last. Click it now. You'll thank me later.